I think that online presence is really, really important, and it is how you can communicate with your supporters. That's where they're living their lives. So it is really important that as a charity we create assets and tools that talk through those methods. So for example, at Teenage Cancer Trust, we did a big campaign which was it was about best to check for young people, checking for signs of cancer early, and we delivered all of that through TikTok influencers. So we created ads, we created supporting information for that online, and that's how that campaign was delivered, because that's where young people live at the moment, and that's who we were trying to reach. So yeah, it's really important. I think it's easy to try to, it's about being targeted. I think being really targeted online.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of On the Same Landing Page. This year, to coincide with Google Ads grants that we're helping charities apply for, we've focused the podcast on issues affecting non-profit organisations across the UK. Now more than ever, it's becoming increasingly tough to raise funds, get your message across amidst the 24 news cycle, and recruit volunteers, staff and donors. So as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Astra Newton, Head of Advertising. Astra, can you say hello in a non-European language?
Hello, and well, it's technically Latin, isn't it? So it's all Latin, but just to fulfill the brief. Ni hao? Yes, that's Mandarin.
Okay, brilliant. Put you on the spot there. And we're very lucky to be joined by Katie Cartwright, the Head of Regional Fundraising at Action for Children. Before that, Katie has held senior roles at Teenage Cancer Trust, Alzheimer's Society, Cancer Research, and many more. Katie, hello, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Katie, can you say hello in a non-European language?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Well, I want to say Sawadee Ka, which is Thai, and I think it means hello. I remember I learned it in Thailand, so we'll go Sawadee Ka.
Love it.
Nice one. I can't believe you both did that. I thought you were going to stumble. Well done. So can we start can you talk to me a little bit about the mission of Action for Children for those that don't know?
Yeah, I can indeed. So Action for Children exists to ensure that all young people basically have a happy childhood. And we actually have a number of ways that we ensure that we deliver that. So we work really closely with children and families, and the focus is really on spotting problems early so that we can offer help when and where it's needed. So we do this, as I say, in many ways. We have lots of different kind of forms of services that we offer for young people, from childcare to mental health support to parenting. You may have seen the John Lewis advert this Christmas, which talked about the support that we offer for care leavers. We also work with families who have disabled children. We work on services that help families to prevent and reverse child neglect. And we also have services that offer parents themselves support, so that we can, as I say, so that we can kind of tackle those problems right from the start. So there's lots of different forms in which you may see the services that Action for Children funds, but it is all around supporting children to have the happiest of childhoods.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed, your website is huge, but you've managed to encapsulate how many different things. There's so many different services on there. It's a great website, by the way, as well. Good user journey and everything. And I noticed that, trying to cover all of those services concisely and in a way that kind of gets across the message just must be difficult. How do you find a balance in terms of fundraising between activity that brings in the most funds versus activity that's rewarding in other ways?
Yeah, and it is, I think it's probably so as a charity we have specific areas of focus at any one time, and so depending on the campaign or the activity that we're all running will depend on where we kind of focus and what kind of activity we do. Within regional fundraising, I think it can depend on the region. In regional fundraising, we have a number of different ways that money comes into our pot, from working with regional corporates to working with individuals to working with the Methodist Church to working with volunteers. And I think it is I think the real skill for a regional fundraiser is knowing what story to tell to what audience, and that's where our regional team have a real skill. They know their areas, they know their regions, they know their supporters, and they're expert storytellers. So it is about finding the link to that person with your charity. And I think that probably forms the basis of all fundraising, whether it be major fundraising, corporate fundraising, or regional fundraising. It's finding the story that supporter empathizes with and the story that person cares about. So it's hard to answer that, because I don't think there's one answer. I think it's, as a fundraiser, the one thing you have to be is adaptable. And that can be, you can pre-think that, or you can literally have to do it on the spot when you're talking to perhaps a regional corporate who suddenly tells you that what you thought they wanted was something completely different. So yeah, we're definitely adaptable creatures.
In terms of the regional fundraising, Katie, how does that work structurally and operationally within the charity? Like, obviously there's different regions where you get different funds. Are they then restricted to be spent in those regions, or are they unrestricted funds?
So ideally, we will always try and generate unrestricted funds, because as a charity, that's where we need it. And whether you're kind of working in a local hospice or you're working at a national charity, those core unrestricted funds are what really allow you to make the biggest impact, because at the end of the day, the service providers in the charity, or the people that are managing the hospices, they know where the money needs to go. And it's not always, for want of a better word, the sexiest place it's going to go. It's those core funds. It's where you need it to make the fundamental elements of your charity work. So as a team, we always try to identify unrestricted opportunities, because we know that's what makes the charity run the best, and that's where we can make the biggest impact for our beneficiaries. However, as a regional team, there are times that regional supporters, whether they be corporates, whether they be individuals, whether they be groups, where they do want it to stay in their specific region. And I think we're seeing this more now than ever before post-pandemic, where there's been this real focus on supporting community, in looking after your direct area and your region. So it's really, it is one of the big challenges for regional fundraising, I think, is getting that balance right between really demonstrating the regional impact that we're making as a national charity, because our services are local services. What we deliver in Sheffield will be very different to what we deliver in Norwich. And so it's getting that regional impact across, while still, emphasizing where the biggest impact can be made. And that isn't always by restricting funds. However, sometimes we do. And I imagine every regional team is the same. And as I say, we're seeing it more so than ever now post-pandemic, when people do want to see the impact of their funds on their doorstep.
You talked about post-pandemic changes to fundraising. Are there any other big shifts in the challenge of fundraising since you've been doing it, and how's that manifested?
Yes, I think so. In particular, as you mentioned, I've actually only been at Action for Children for about 6 weeks, but I was at Teenage Cancer Trust throughout the pandemic and post-pandemic, and with a real focus on the regional corporate work. And definitely in regional corporates, I have never, in sort of 20 years of working in that area, I have never known it as challenging as it was post-pandemic. And I think there's lots of reasons for that. Obviously, the corporates themselves were coming out of an incredibly challenging time. They were coming back in a time where their workforce looked different, and the way that they were operating was very different. They still had people sat in all corners of the country in their front rooms or their studies. And so the way in which we fundraise has had to change fundamentally post-pandemic. And that's the same for communities as well. And I think we still are, and I don't think we ever will get back to how it looked pre-pandemic, in that sort of the way in which we fundraise has had to change. People have taken a long time to start going to events again. People have taken a long time to start coming together in the way that they did. And in many demographics, so we do a lot of work with older supporters, they're still not back to that complete comfort zone of going to big places, being together with lots of other people. There's still a lot of hesitancy for a lot of demographics who would support us as a charity. So I think there's that real lifestyle shift. And I think people seem to have different priorities now. Obviously, we're going into the back, we're in a cost of living crisis now, which is partly as a result of the kind of costs of the pandemic and lots of other reasons. We won't get too political right now. And so people's pull on their income, people don't have as much money to support, and a lot of the people that potentially supported previously are probably having their own cost of living crises. You know, people who were very comfortable for, I think we all are, feeling the pinch. We were joking earlier about the fact that I'm freezing right now because we've not put our heating on, and I think there's a lot of people, yeah, with a lot of strain. So it is a very, very different world, I think, we now find ourselves in as the third sector, and I don't think it'll ever go back to the way it was before. And so there's a real balancing act between finding a new normal, between managing the expectations of trustees and senior leadership who need us to start generating that income again, because most charities saw a real dip in income over the pandemic. So there's now that real pressure and need to start generating that income again, but we're now trying to generate that income in a world where people have got less money. So it does feel like the odds are against us at the moment, that's for sure. But ironically, never have our beneficiaries needed it more. So it's kind of, it's a bit of a crazy parallel we're sitting in. Yeah, it feels like it should be part of the Marvel universe perhaps, but yeah, no, it's reality.
It's mad. I mean, I remember the online digital transformation was like the word we were using a lot in like agency world, about getting people who previously could rely on events into like getting their website sorted and everything like that. And I'm assuming that has been a part of what you guys have been doing as well. Has there been any like and not just where you are now, but in previous charities, has there been any like really successful campaigns that have worked really well, that have brought digital at the heart of it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was probably the conversation that every charity was having during the pandemic, was what can we do on, you know, how can we maximize this online world? Yeah, what's working now? And when I was at Teenage Cancer Trust, we did a push-up challenge, a Facebook challenge that was incredibly successful. It created a community of fundraisers, and the income that it generated for young people with cancer was phenomenal and way beyond the expectations of what the team had, that they thought that would deliver. And so that was fantastic. But then of course the conversation turned to, well, how can we replicate it? And I think digital and online is a funny thing, in that, you know, it's a bit like when you try to capture that viral moment of the ice bucket challenge. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason as to why it specifically worked. I think it's a little bit right place at right time. I think Teenage Cancer Trust perhaps maximised on the fact that, you know, they are a young charity, the beneficiaries are young, they live their world online, always have done, always will do. But even at Teenage Cancer Trust, we were unable to capture that success again online after the push-up challenge. At Action for Children, within the regional team, we have an amazing product development team that are always looking at ways that we can maximize income. And the big focus last year was online fundraising. You know, how can we generate that online community that will maximize income? And who know, we haven't found that magic bullet. And I think part of it is fundamentally because at the end of the day, when you look at successful fundraisers, the majority of the time it's because we've developed a community, we've developed a relationship. Fundraising's relationship at the end of the day. And as much as we try, and as much as we're doing this in different ways post-pandemic, online, we're doing this now, obviously online, I just don't think you can capture that community online. So it's a tricky one, and I think there will be successful online fundraisers, but I think a lot of it is perhaps a little bit of a right place at the right time moment. So I'm sure there's digital fundraisers out there that have formulas and can say much better what will work and why it will work. But I think from our perspective, we do rely on telling stories, developing those relationships, having that empathy with our supporters, where we can really connect with them on a much more less digital face.
Yeah, it's definitely like we noticed as well with a lot of the campaigns we were running, there was like timing is so important. So there was a time where cost per click was low, and you could get some really good reach with everyone being locked in the house, and so digital was kind of the only way to go. And then cost per click, even though everyone's now able to go out, it hasn't gone back down again. Cost per click just keeps going up. So it limits the results you get, and you can't just rinse and repeat the same thing.
No.
Which is really frustrating, because you think you've stumbled across a gold mine, and then it's like, okay, we have to keep innovating and keep creating new ways to get at this audience with something they haven't heard.
Definitely. So, I think that's such a good point as well, because in the digital world, it is that constant expectation of innovation, and just because something works for a few months doesn't mean it always will, and it does consistently have to evolve, and that's incredibly challenging. And it's very challenging for charities, I think, who don't have that budget to persistently and consistently innovate. So it's a tricky one.
Relentless, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you touched upon the cost of living crisis there. Like, during, obviously, the pressure that then brings upon you guys as a charity is huge. And you've already covered how that affects the charity's goals, but how does that affect like you and your team, and the pressure is so high now, and the team that are actually putting the work into those goals? How is it affecting you guys?
Yeah, I think it is hard, and I think from a morale perspective in teams across charities in the sector, people are finding it really, really hard. And I speak to lots of colleagues in lots of other charities who are really, really feeling the pressure at the moment. I think what's wonderful is the reason people tend to work in the third sector is because they do want to make a difference. And so the motivation to do it is still strong. And I know within my team, obviously, we see more than maybe some charities the impact of the cost of living crisis, and why our fundraising and the work that we do is more important than ever, because so many of the families that we support are incredibly impacted by what's happening at the moment. So it is hard, but I think at the same time that we're finding it hard, we're hearing more and more stories as a charity of why it's needed. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but in a good way, if that makes sense, or in a motivating way, I would say, because so it is hard. And I think teams across the country, across different charities, are having lots of conversations about how to maintain that motivation, how to keep morale high at a time when every team in every fundraising department is finding it more difficult than ever before, not just regional, corporate, major donors, individual. Everyone's got huge challenges. And I think lots of charities are having a real focus on well-being of their employees and ensuring that everyone's okay, and really working on that. So that's brilliant. And I would say from a cultural perspective, at Action for Children and at Teenage Cancer Trust, it's been incredible, and they are really tapped on into how to make sure that people are okay, because burnout's high, and I think it's high in the third sector because you have a lot of my team members do what they do because they're incredibly passionate about our cause, and that makes it really hard to shut your laptop at the end of the day and go, well, I'm not going to worry anymore. Or when you potentially don't hit a target at the end of the month, it's very difficult to just sit there and say, well, we didn't hit target, but we tried next month, because fundamentally that means that we can't fund a service, or we can't support that family, and that's what's at the back of the minds, I think, a lot of the time. So burnout is high in the charity sector because I think the need to do what we need to do comes from a different place, but it's as hard as it is in any other sector, if not harder, because we don't have a product to sell. We're selling impact and stories and need, as opposed to a shiny new iPhone or a fantastic wrinkle cream or something like that. So it's tricky. It is tricky. And I've spoken to lots of friends recently in the sector who are finding it really, really tough at the moment. But we fortunately, we most of us have made a pretty strong stuff.
Like you said, it does disproportionately, especially like out of the frying pan into the fire after a pandemic, and now into a cost of living crisis, and it does disproportionately affect young people. So the work that you do is so important, but in a way it's like kind of meta. Now, I don't know, I might be generalizing, but obviously lots of people are using the cost of living crisis like in their own advertising, as charities are, you guys are as well, to say, look, we need this money more than ever now. Do you see a spike in, obviously some people are still wealthy enough to give some, after things like this, like the cost of living, does it actually increase fundraising for a little bit until it sort of dips down again, I imagine?
I think it can. I think it can shine a light on the need for something. I mean, we have an incredibly saturated charity sector in the UK, and again, without sounding crass, I do think causes come in and out of fashion depending on what the media are talking about at the time, or depending on what celebrities are supporting what charity at the time. And so you do have your moments in the spotlight as a charity. And I think as a charity, what we need to do is maximize those moments without being crude and without taking advantage of the beneficiaries, because at the end of the day, as a charity, yes, we're here to fundraise, but what we're actually here to deliver is our case for support, and that's ensuring that young people have a happy childhood. So there is that fine line between, yeah, sort of taking a story that's in the media and running with it and really kind of, and I think it's what you know, as charities, it is what we used to do in the olden days. You know, you did see a lot of sob stories. I remember some of, you know, some charities with the TV appeals where they were, you know, they were hard to watch. And I think it's finding that balance, and it is a huge challenge in fundraising, because sometimes what you want to say as a fundraiser, because you know it will really strike someone hard and perhaps get them to put their hand in their pocket, actually flies in the face of what you're trying to deliver for your beneficiaries. So it is a challenge, but yeah, you are right. You are absolutely right. I think depending on what's happening in the media or in, you know, in society in general, it does give you the opportunity to get people to empathize with your cause, because they're hearing about it more, because they're more aware of it. It's very easy to turn a blind eye to something that doesn't affect you. You know, and I've done many pitches in my time in charities, and the key to winning a pitch is to get the people that are sat around the table to empathize with your cause. So if it's in the news, people are empathizing with your cause because they are imagining themselves in that situation. So yeah, it's a balancing act, but definitely we do see, like, for example, the impact that the John Lewis advert had for Action for Children was huge. We definitely saw an uplift in support and interest in the charity, as a result of the amazing partnership that the corporate team won with John Lewis. So yeah, it definitely has a knock-on effect. And I think as fundraisers, it's about maximizing that opportunity, but then ensuring that you have longevity off it as well. So it's not just a little rise, because from a more practical budgeting perspective, how do you replace the impact of a John Lewis advert when you don't have a John Lewis advert anymore? It becomes really difficult. So it's about maximizing those opportunities, but ensuring that, yeah, they have that lasting impact and that legacy.
God, let's ask a question about transparency. So it's, from the outside, it looks like it's something that you probably have to do more and more and more on, just because I know, just from like conversations in the pub, you know, like, well, where does it go in? Like, is it going to this place? And you mentioned it earlier, right? There's places where people want to see that pound. Yeah. But like an organization is made up of boring bits. That doesn't work if every single pound just goes to whatever they want to, what they perceive as being value. Sure. So how has that evolved? Like in this, across all of the roles you've had, like, has it changed a lot? Does that affect how you report on things?
Yeah, I think I challenge someone to find any industry where you have to be as transparent as the charity sector. And that's right. Sure, that's right. You absolutely have to show that as a charity, the money you are raising goes where you are telling your supporters it is going. And I would actually argue that the majority of the charities in the UK are doing exactly that. But what the media loves to do is find the odd bad apple, or paint the one-sided picture of the fact that, you know, that perhaps that a CEO of a charity is perhaps getting paid more than society thinks they should be getting paid more, because it's a charity. And it's actually a real bugbear of mine. And if ever I did a TED talk, I think this is what I'd do it on. And I find it bizarre that, you know, sure, we shouldn't have to have charities. We shouldn't have to charitably fund Cancer Research UK to find a cure for the many different types of cancers that there are. We shouldn't have to be expecting a charity to do that. But hey, that's the world that we live in. Until there is a way out of that, that's the way it's always going to be. And so I find it really bizarre that society finds it appalling that a charity like CR UK will go out and hire a CEO who is incredibly qualified, like beyond anything that a CEO of perhaps a commercial company is qualified for, in medicine, in fundraising, in economics, in all types of different areas, PhDs coming out of his ear, because he is leading an organization that is trying to solve one of the biggest challenges that we face as a society. And yet people are appalled at the fact that he gets a salary that isn't anywhere near what the CEO of a games company who's creating Call of Duty or Fortnite and is making incredible amounts of income and feeding the pockets of fat cats. And, you know, you could go down the moral reasons that, you know, that industry is great, or is it actually, I love gaming, I don't think it's that bad, so that's painting a bad picture. So, but anyway, you see the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I see
like
your point.
as a society, we're happy with them getting paid shed loads of money, but the guy that's trying to find a cure for cancer, absolutely not. We should not absolutely be spending him money. And like, I challenge anyone with that opinion to walk in the footsteps of a fundraiser, of a regional fundraiser, and see how incredibly hard it is to generate income for any charity, no matter how great or how empathetic your cause is, because it is one of the most competitive industries in the world. And so, you know, if you want to raise income for a charity, you need to put the right people in there. And so the idea that, you know, we have to be so transparent, and the minute I've had so many conversations with good friends who've said, you get paid to raise income for a charity, isn't that wrong? And shouldn't the money be going towards the cause? And most charities, you know, try to work towards that sort of, for every pound raised, that they're trying to work in that 20-25p spend. And that's incredible. I mean, how many businesses out there can say that that's the kind of ROI that they're working on? And not only that, but with minimal budget as well. I mean, the budget that fundraising teams have to generate the income that they do is tiny. You're expected to create something from nothing. And so, yeah, sorry, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but absolutely, yeah, absolutely right. Like, of course we have to be transparent. Of course we need to deliver the narrative and the reports that prove that the money that we are raising is going where it needs to be, but there is a cost for that. And I think the media are very keen to point out the fact that charities spend a little bit of money to generate a whole lot of good. And it's just a really odd narrative for me that we don't have that same abhorrence for companies that are creating really commercial, non-needed things in our life.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I mean, the very press printing it, right, is
exactly
the kinds of people who are funding things they shouldn't be.
Exactly
so
that. Yeah,
it's very morally bizarre, but
yeah,
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I totally went off on one then. Yeah.
No, all good, please.
The bar is so low for politicians, but so high for CEOs of any charity. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Action for Children do some really great research. We'll come onto it for segment 2 because we've got a report we're gonna take some bits from. How do you kind of use research and reports? How useful is that in the work that you do in terms of telling stories?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly important. And I think, you know, we as fundraisers, we go out, we tell the story of what we do. But the most important thing about the stories that we tell is why we do it. And we'll quite often, like I often talk to my team about sliding doors moments, and like, in order to paint that story, like, what are the two options? This is life. So we used to do it a lot at Teenage Cancer Trust. You know, if a young person is diagnosed with cancer as a teenager, of course, if Teenage Cancer Trust doesn't exist, they would still receive their treatment on the NHS. They would still probably receive similar success rates for that treatment. But what elements wouldn't they receive? And you have a young person going through cancer treatment without Teenage Cancer Trust, and then you have the young person going through it with Teenage Cancer Trust, who's getting the mental health support, who's getting the specialized cancer nurse who can deliver that information and that journey in a way that a young person needs it, in a way that the NHS simply can't do because of time constraints and budget constraints. And I think so that research and that impact of both why what we do is needed. So for example, at Teenage Cancer Trust, what is the impact of mental health? What is the impact, of chemotherapy on a young person's mental health? It's insane. It's really, the impact is huge. It's lifelong. It will stay with them forever. so, and it's the same at Action for Children. You know, what is the impact of that young person, you know, that young person who's leaving care at that age, if they didn't have those services and that support that Action for Children have, how would their life look compared to how it would with that support? And those impact, that research is what really feeds that narrative, and it gives us the ability and, you know, the expertise to be able to talk about that impact in the way that we do. And that's what generates our support, because we know we make a huge difference. We know without us, those young people would be living a very different life, and we know that they wouldn't be getting the support that they have. So yeah, it's so important. I mean, it's very easy to paint a picture, but supporters, partners are, you know, they're much more sophisticated. People have a much better grasp, you know, going back to what we were talking about before, you know, the work of the third sector is in the media constantly, that impact. So they ask those questions. They want to know where their money's going. They want to know about the difference it makes. So we need that research and that impact and that evidence, because otherwise all we're doing is painting a fluffy story. And the impact of that pound that person donates is huge. And that's, so yeah, it's massive. And we work really, really closely with our impact teams, with our policy teams, with our campaigning teams, where, you know, from where that research comes, and that really drives that core fundamental change that we're trying to do as a charity. So yeah, really important.
Awesome.
Well, Jason kind of mentioned before, we have a package that we've started running for charities, and we kind of broke down the 3 pillars of things that charities struggle with all the time online: their fundraising, their awareness, and recruitment. And we've touched on them all, but you just touched on a little bit there about the impacts that you guys have. Like, how do you amplify the stories of the work that you do and get engagement from it? How is Action for Children achieving that? I mean, I can see that you guys do use ads as well, so part B to that question is, how important are they in that?
Yeah, very much so. And I think probably a really good example is the Secret Santa campaign that we've obviously just run over Christmas, where by bringing that impact to life through a story, I mean, we use TV adverts, we also did a lot on social and online. They are that's where people are exposed to our work the majority of the time. So, you know, the majority of people that walk down the street, well, not the majority, but a lot of the people that walk down the street won't have had direct impact with our services. So they won't understand the difference it makes. And they fortunately won't be in a world where they potentially need those services. So bringing those stories to life is what really gets people empathizing with our cause. And I think, like with the Secret Santa campaign, for example, the thing that really struck me was the story. So the story that we went out on TV with, of the little boy whose grandma was looking after him. And she was worried that she simply didn't have money to be able to put presents under the Christmas tree. And I think instantly having that real life story, you know, I'm fortunate, I've got 2 children. I'm fortunate enough that I've never had to use a service for Action for Children. But instantly that brought to life for me, what would it be like for my 2 kids if on Christmas morning they woke up and they did, you know, and so it's that ability to put someone's in, you instantly put in the shoes of the beneficiaries of our cause. And I think, and as that empathy and that understanding of why that support is needed can only be demonstrated through stories, I think. So online, you know, that's where the majority of people live their lives now. My son, he's 14, he's obviously next generation of a charity supporter. Oh my God, spends his entire life online. He's on TikTok, he's on Insta, he's on Be Real. I'm trying not to show my age now by not saying Facebook, but you know, they live their whole life online. But then my generation, you know, of 40-ish, you know, I'm still on Facebook. That's still where so yeah, I think that online presence is really, really important. And it is how you can communicate with your supporters. That's where they're living their lives. So it is really important that as a charity, we create assets and tools that talk through those methods. So for example, at Teenage Cancer Trust, we did a big campaign which was it's about best to check for young people, checking for signs of cancer early, and we delivered all of that through TikTok influencers. So we created ads, we created supporting information for that online, and that's how that campaign was delivered, because that's where young people live at the moment, and that's who we were trying to reach. So yeah, it's really important. I think it's easy to try to, it's about being targeted. I think being really targeted online. Yeah.
You just kind of touched on it in a way. This is just my last question, and then we'll move on to segment 2. But how do you drive people to find you online as well? How do people come across you? Because you're in a lucky position where you're a national charity. Lots of people already know who you are. So how do you tap into those new demographics and like your son and stuff as well? Obviously, the internet's really important to that. But what about, I don't know, maybe the older generations of people who don't really use the computers and stuff? How do you do that then?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I don't know if I specifically have the answer, but it's a conversation that we constantly have around the table. So, looking at our Secret Santa campaign 2023, we're looking at ways that we can, how can we drive people to our website to be able to engage with our work and see what we do? Because as Jason's already said, like, it's a brilliant website with a whole load of information there, but potentially you could say that unless you're going to look for that information, you're not going to necessarily go and visit. So we use lots, a lot of our engagement points are done through the website. So if somebody, for example, wants to sign up, so we will send information out to our regional supporters about our action squads, for example, which is a way in which you can support Action for Children. You can pull together a fundraising group in whatever form it might be. You might be a bunch of mums that want to do a quick fundraiser. You might be a corporate, you might be a church group, whatever form, if you want to do a fundraiser for us. And to drive people to the website, the recruitment for that and the sign up for that is all done through our website. So there is definite, with every campaign, that is a definite conversation that we have, is kind of how can we utilize our website to get people to do that? And then obviously it's all monitored to see whether people are using it in that way. But yeah, the action squads is probably a good example, in that to do that, to sign up for that, you need to visit a page that exists in our Action for Children website to be able to do that. And then from that, you go on your supporter journey as an action squad.
Cool. I think you guys have a really good example of digital done well. I've been to the landing page as well from one of the AdWords that you have on Google, and it's very clear call to actions straight away. There's not loads of different options for things to do. It's very clear what you're asking for there, and it gives you an amount of options to do that, how different ways to do that. Then a bit more information if they're not really quite bought in yet. It's textbook. Yeah. So if anyone's listening and wants an example of how to do Google Ads with a good landing page, Action for Children's the one to do it. Although that will put your cost per click up because people will be clicking it.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sorry about that. Let's move on to segment 2. While I'm getting it ready, the phrase I always get asked as a marketer is, can you get us to go viral? And it's like, it's the one that kind of gets my back up, like, oh my God, that's so different. If everyone could go viral, then I don't know. I can't make you go viral, otherwise I'd be viral. We would be viral. Maybe we will. What's the phrase you get asked that kind of makes you go, oh, and then you get asked a lot?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Does it have to be, just in general?
Yeah.
I think the one, I don't know if it's so much a question, but the phrase that I hear a lot within regional, as a regional fundraiser, is we often get that, so you go out and do the collecting tins, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think there's this real, and it's, do you know what? It's not just external, it's internal as well within the third sector. There's this real kind of culture that people believe that, the regional corporates are with a warm, fluffy hug, the regional teams with a warm, fluffy hug, that we go out and we see Doris, who's done a coffee morning for us. And sure, that is an element of what we do in regional fundraising. And that's one of the reasons why the regional fundraisers are so awesome, because they do have that ability to build relationships with whoever. But I always say to the team, like, we are the sum of our parts. Like, if you often look at the income within a charity, one of the biggest benefactors of that income line for the entire charity will be regional, and the majority of that is from those little small incomes that you go out and get. And if you break down the figures of a huge charity, CR UK, for example, if you look at the majority of their overall income that comes from donations of £20 or less, it's huge, it's ginormous. And not only that, but we don't just collect little donations. We're dealing with partnerships that are worth up to £100,000 a year, which is huge, just from one group or one supporter. But also, we're dealing with numerous supporters, so it's huge. So this kind of idea that the regional team are the little cute sister who goes out and we do a coffee morning with Doris, then we go collect a check for £80. It's so so wrong, and I think it really does a disservice to regional teams across the country, because yes, that is an element of what we do, and yes, I'm pretty sure that my father-in-law thinks that what I do for a living is go and pack bags at Tesco with a donation tin, but it couldn't be further from the truth. So yeah, that's probably the phrase that grinds the most.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do is to ask my nan what I do as a job at Christmas. And she gives it a good go. It's something to do with computers. You do something with computers. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is true. I spend a lot of time on them, so we're not wrong.
To be fair, literally having lunch today, I went downstairs and my husband said to me, so what is it that you do? Decided, so it's not just it's not just them.
So segment 2 was called Fake Facts before. What we would do, and basically we get 3 statements, and one of them is an untruth that we maybe have exaggerated in some way. This time we thought we'd take them from your reports, a few of your reports, Action for Children. So I'm aware of the political issue of calling it fake facts when it's your information. So I've renamed it for this round. It's now called Identify the Wrong Statement, that will change slightly from a true statement for a balanced educational and entertaining podcast segment.
Okay, I like it. Rolls off the tongue.
Yes, yeah. I'm in marketing, as you can tell. I'm good at this.
Clearly.
So let's go to the round. Oh, let me share. I'm possibly giving you the answers at the moment.
Good, because I haven't read our annual statement yet. This is a real test.
So I'm very aware that we are putting this in front of you after only 6 weeks or so at the business. So we're not expecting you to be any better than it's you and Astra are playing on this one.
Great.
Right. So this is the first. I can't move the Zoom things in the way. So I've got like a word that I can't see that I'm going to guess in this sentence because there's something on my screen that's in the way that you can't. So for the listeners, I'm just going to read out 3 statements, and Katie and Astra have to tell us which one is incorrect. So the most common barrier to access mental, does that say, support,
parental,
is that it was not available.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is it parental?
Yeah, parental.
I've just got a box in that space. 42% of parents have struggled to access at least one parenting support service in the last 5 years. Or is the fake fact that over 70% of parents are too anxious to ask for parental support?
I think it might be 42%, just because of all of the cuts from government over the last 5 years. I think it might be
I think I'm going to go with it's that one.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm going to go with the third one. I think it's over 70% of parents.
Okay, Jason is having a mare. So I was trying to remove the box and it clicked it. So yeah, number 3, you
we'll
both
give you that
get
a
point. Over 70% of parents are too anxious. That's the fake fact. So the other two are true.
Okay.
Right, okay. Oh yeah, we were identifying the true ones there. We've got this. None of us are very good at this segment so far.
So on this one, can you read it, Astra? Because I can't.
Yes,
see
I will
some
read
on my
it.
screen. Okay.
So families on universal credit are more likely to face food insecurity. 10% of children ages 10 to 18 are worried about their mental health. And 49% of families who need financial support experience adult or child mental health concerns.
Well, I think it's the third one, because I think the second one is much higher than that percentage-wise. So I'm going to go
10%
third.
of children are ages 10 to 18 are worried. Yeah, so that's this fake one then. 10% of children, you think?
Is it the fake one we're trying to get up?
Yeah.
I think it's 10% is higher then. Sorry, I'm with you now. Yeah, I think 10% of children ages 10 to 18 are worried, because I think it's higher.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm going to vote the same.
Well done.
Yay.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually 42%.
It's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot more awareness, but a lot more damage being done by all of the digital devices and networks. And you just don't ever leave it.
No, and I think it's gone up massively post-pandemic and cost of living crisis. Like we've released, going back to the research and the statistics recently about how many children are aware of the pressures and the impact on their parents, and so that's then obviously having a knock-on effect. And it's really worrying.
Okay.
So children's main worries are pressures from school and mental health. 1 in 3 children think that childhoods today are better than they were for their parents' generation. Child poverty is rising everywhere except Wales. Ooh.
Now that's a tricky one, because child poverty is rising everywhere, but I don't know if Wales is the exception.
Yeah, 1 in 3 children think their childhoods today are better. I'm tempted to say that's the fake one.
I think that's the fake one.
They never know how good they've got it, do they?
Exactly. I was going to say, my kids definitely wouldn't agree with that. Yeah, they think they have it hard. I'd go, yeah. I think I'm with you. I think the second one.
Yeah, I think second one, Jason.
No.
Oh no,
it's Northern Ireland. Yeah.
Oh really? It's because they're still in the EU. But anyway, I'll say no more.
Yeah.
For now, anyway.
This is
the
the
time
one
of recording.
That's a future podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I did this test before you guys with the researcher, and I only got one wrong. So, but I didn't give you a fair go because I gave you the first one. Okay, next one.
Parental mental health service is the most in-demand parental support service. 67% of parents are unable to access an essential early years service. The highest proportion of parents using early years services is in London.
This is a total guess.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
I think I'm going to go with the third one.
Parental mental health service is the most in demand. Yeah, I think the third one also.
No, that's the top one.
I need to read my annual report, don't I?
Actually, education and development that is the most in demand service. Fair enough.
Right.
There we go.
That's the end of that. So then,
I did terribly. I definitely need to do my research in my annual report.
We did some good speculating though. So.
We did. I think. Yeah. I think we sounded educated when we were speculating.
The final segment, then, take it away, Astra.
Okay, so segment 3 is strategy analogy. So we'll pull up a random word generator, and don't sound too excited, Katie.
No, I was like, gosh, this sounds hard. I'm actually doing strategies at the moment. It's
Well, you don't actually have to do a strategy. It's more of an analogy. So we'll pull up a word and then just an analogy to do with sort of the themes we've been talking about today around that word. So I'll do nouns to make it a little bit easier.
Okay.
Ooh, the random word is cooperation. So an analogy surrounding cooperation.
So do you want a true life story or just like an
if you've
example
got
of
one?
I'd like the life story. Yeah, that'd be better.
Yeah. So cooperation. So I think so we're working hard on this at the moment at Action for Children within the regional team, and I think a lot of charities are starting to talk about, and in the cheesiest way, I think they call it like one team, one dream. There's a lot of that going on. But actually it's something that I feel really strongly about, and I think that collaboration and that joint approach is what's really going to unlock the potential for charity support, particularly post-pandemic. So we did a lot of work at Teenage Cancer Trust, and I'm trying replicating the work at Action for Children, in that, as opposed to, I think, historically within regional teams, the corporate income line, for example, that sits with regional is the regional corporate, and then you've got the national corporate somewhere over here, and never the twain will meet. But actually, I think what we're seeing now is some really collaborative examples of where actually, by working much closer together, but on the national and the regional income for corporate, you can really unlock some huge successes. And I think examples of that, for example, Action for Children with the John Lewis partnership, obviously that was a partnership that was won and achieved through the national corporate team, and they worked incredibly hard to secure that. However, key to the success of that was the support from the regional team, who were able to go out and about and go into those branches, talk to those employees on the ground, as well as really deliver the regional impact that that partnership was going to have across those stores and across that national chain. So yeah, I think cooperating more as cross teams across charities is what will really unlock that potential income for charities across the sector, particularly post-pandemic.
Yeah, my analogy was going to be similar in that I think for charities to thrive, you have to have the cooperation of your fundraising team, your CEOs, your recruitment team, your donors, everything. It does all rely on, it's such a finely tuned balance, isn't it? And passing across that knowledge from sector to sector can only strengthen the cause. And then on the more negative side of that, if there was a bit more cooperation in the government with various sectors within, perhaps we wouldn't need so many charities. But
so true. Yeah, I watched Question Time last night, and that definitely shone through.
Yeah. What about you, Jason? Anything to add?
I've been listening, so I haven't been thinking about mine. And yes, I honestly can't add anything here. I was going to say something about cooperation when it comes to, there was a lot of different types of funding you guys get. I thought that was interesting because I didn't realize quite so many different types, from corporate to the person who pays £2 a month. There's a range of people, and that surprised me as to how different you obviously then have to speak to those people. And that must be a whole task in itself. How do you know how to do that? Like, that comes with experience, I'm assuming, and you hire people on that basis.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think within our team, so for example, just in the regional team, I have a team of amazing senior managers who all have real targeted specialisms. And so, and we work really hard on things like supporter journeys and how we segment and who our supporters are and how they like to be spoken to. And it's really kind of quite cut down, because, at the end of the day, we need to make those supporters feel valued. We need to surprise and delight them is a term that we use a lot in the sector at the moment, and we need to make sure we're talking to them in the way that they want to be spoken to. So quite a lot of analysis goes on.
Awesome. Well, that kind of concludes the episodes. We obviously always give our guests a chance to kind of beat the drum for anything that they're really passionate about at the moment, or talk about anything they'd like to raise some awareness to. So here's your chance to do that.
Oh, wow. On the spot. I think that, well, the one thing that we're working really hard on at the moment, I think, at Action for Children is, and I cannot believe I'm going to say this at this point of the year, what we're in March, is our Secret Santa campaign. So I would urge anybody that's listening to check it out, to give it a share, to have a think at how they can support and spread that message, because it really is an incredible campaign. We're really, really proud of it. We want it to be one of the best in the sector. So if anybody has any way they can support us with that, please do get in touch.
Brilliant. And awesome. we'll link to that in our podcast show notes as well for anyone who wants to check it out.
Fab.
Brilliant. Any final thoughts from you, Astra?
No, nothing from me. Just thank you very much, Katie. It's been really insightful. Really good to have you on.
Fabulous.
Maybe you could say goodbye in a non-European language.
Oh no, I only know how to open conversations, not close them.
Yeah, me too, right? Because I never stop talking. I never actually say bye.
I've still got conversations going on in China from 10 years ago.
Okay, thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.